button again. And then we'll start with the apologies.
Hello.
So, starting with the apologies,
we're
like really late, and that's because Facebook Live was not working. So we hope some of you have been persistent and have stuck around and may be tuning in now. And should that be the case, do me a favor and say hi, friends, in the chat room, in the comments section, and let us know you're here. It would be a shame if we were to get together on this auspicious occasion and then find nobody's around. I'm going to scroll up. No, that's just me making that comment. What I should do maybe is to run over to my other Facebook page. It's just total chaos here. That's all right. Oh, Jamie's here. Good. Okay. So he stuck it out, and you probably were wondering what happened to us, Jamie. And I told Alan after, I think, 85 consecutive shows, Facebook Live has been as steady as the railroad, and all of a sudden just stopped working. But we're here. Alan's in the house. Jamie's in the house.
Hello.
He did say something that I'm not going to repeat.
Apparently, Facebook headquarters is in a forest in Ontario.
Yes. We're all trying to recover vocally and every other way. I'm glad you're not traveling or, heaven forbid, doing a gig outside tonight. The Phillies played last night in Philadelphia.
Oh.
And they played an outdoor show in Philly where the weather was still considered dangerous. And they just said, well, screw it, we're going to do our game anyway. They beat the Detroit Tigers, for anybody who's interested. Anybody else in the house, say hello. We're going to do a tribute to the late, great Astrid Gilberto tonight, who just passed away at the age of 83. And the AM radio in the 1960s, especially in New York, but all over the country, but the flagship station in New York was 77 WABC, and this is what we grew up listening to. And you would hear Motown, the Beatles, British Invasion, folk music, country, even occasionally, like the Statler Brothers, Counting Flowers on the Wall. That was a hit.
Yep.
Everything you could imagine. And then the Jobim's music broke through like a breath of fresh air, and you'd hear Simon and Garfunkel sing, and then you'd hear this song, The Girl from Ipanema. And just a few words about this album. It was really a Stan Getz thing. It was his record deal. Stan Getz had a record deal, and he said, I want to do this with these guys, and invited them to New York, probably flew them in, and Jobim plays piano on the whole album, and it's personally, I'll have to talk to John Corba about this sometime. It's personally my favorite piano playing. Hi, Bob. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Jobim plays piano like with one hand almost. Just these beautiful lyrical little solos. Apparently he hadn't played piano for a while when he came in to do this. You know who the engineer was on the Gets Gilberto album with that fiery red and orange abstract painting on the cover? And most people, including James Taylor, including people as diverse as George Michael, a ton of people say that's one of the top 10 albums ever made. James Taylor calls it his Desert Island album. If he could only have one album, it would be Gets Gilberto. And do you know who the engineer was? Not the producer, not yet, was this genius, a world-class producer. He was just the guy setting up the mics, engineering it. It was Phil Ramone, engineered Girl from Ipanema, and he particularly said once in an interview, I ran the tape at 30 inches per second, which is like it'll take your finger off. That's going so fast. That's the highest level of quality you can get. And they said that's one of the reasons why the piano sounds so beautiful on the whole thing. And the story of Astrid Gilberto, who was like 19 years old, could barely speak English, and she came in, and I don't know all the particulars of the story as to why she sang it at the last minute. I don't know why they kind of drafted her, but I don't think she was planning to sing it.
But it was, I mean, they knew she was a singer, though, right? I mean, it wasn't like...
Barely.
It wasn't like, I mean, there's a lot of stories where you just, like you're making movies and you just grab somebody just...
Yeah, but it was
outside.
like that. It was almost like, well, we sing together in our kitchen, but I don't sing professionally. She was like that. And her husband just said, come on, honey, just do it, you know. And it was her innocent and very naive and kind of unstudied sound, no vibrato. And so we'll do a little bit of it. We'll take it all the way up to the bridge and then out. We won't do too much of it, but we're going to do this. Alan's played it many years. Turn up a little bit on there so we can hear that Hofner. And Jobim's most famous composition, and certainly a beautiful song, and it goes like this. I'll just vamp on this. You got it.
Tall and shy and young and lovely, a girl from Ipanema was walking. When she passes, each one that she passes goes by. When she walks, she's like the sunlight, swings so cool and sways so gentle. When she passes, each one she passes goes by. Ooh, but I watch her so sadly. How can I tell her I love her? Yes, I would give my all gladly. But instead she walks through the sea. She looks straight ahead, not at me. Tall and tan, young and lovely, girl from Ipanema was walking. When she passes, I smile, but she doesn't see it. She just doesn't see it. She doesn't see me.
The bridge goes to the next key up from F, the key of F. You go to F sharp, and then Jobim apparently used every note in the chromatic scale that he hadn't used, and Paul Simon later said that he borrowed that technique when he wrote Still Crazy after all these years, and he even wrote out the notes that he hadn't used. Who's that? Carol's here. Hello, Zelmore. And Carol Zelmore and I were schmoozing on an O'Connor's page this week, and so let's think of a couple of O'Connor's stories. You and I spent many hours. We had many gigs in many different configurations. You played many solo gigs there. I played solo. I played it with you in a duo. I played with Steve Philp in a duo. The third night that O'Connor's was open, we auditioned before it was open. So they were still nailing stuff. We played for Tom Commune, and then Jack O'Connor said, "Yeah, we'll hire you, but how old are you?" And I guess I was 17, and he said, "Well, you'll have to go down and get a license from the police department to play in a bar." So I went down, I got fingerprinted, which is a very messy affair, and I carried that license around until it crumbled into dust. I had to get a license, and who played the first night O'Connor's was open? Trivia question. Carol, who played the first night? Thanks, Bob. The first night that O'Connor's Beef and Ale in Watchung, famous to us because it was like our cavern club. We did every kind of gig you could imagine there. And Jack would kind of encourage young people in their teens to play. And the trivia question is, and she's done herself proud over the years, is Carol Commune was the first person to ever play on the opening night. And she was Tom Commune, the manager's daughter. So we thought, well, he's just bringing his daughter in here. But she's gone on to become a very well-known solo piano player and has tons of views on Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. She has albums out. So, and of course, a lot of us who played at O'Connor's, Bittersweet, as you and we were called at one time. I played piano in one configuration of Bittersweet, and when you moved to Nashville and became Bailey and the Boys and signed to RCA, then you had 5 top 10 records. So there was lots of people who were kind of partisans of ours in Watchung at O'Connor's. Who just said, yeah, you guys are going places, whatever. One of them was Bill Burnett. He was always a huge encouragement and backer of ours. And I, at the end of my time in Central Jersey, up until 1989, before I moved, I was playing at O'Connor's with the Stingers, which was my originals band, and we released 2 albums.
Shake Hands with the Future. Got some great songs on the Stingers album.
Wow. I can't believe you know that.
I can't believe Bonnie Raitt never recorded any of those things.
I know. It's a thorn in my side. Those were the days. I loved working there, Carol says. Carol was one of the stellar waitresses. Bob Cole saw a lot of gigs at O'Connor's, I'm guessing. Scotzo Orthy is in the house. He said hello, LeBeau. And hello, bro. And
one of my favorite O'Connor stories is I show up there like on a Tuesday, and this was like after we had just, Mike, Kathy, and I had just worked like 6 nights in a row, and we are exhausted. And it's a Tuesday night. We look out at the crowd, and there's only about 20 people there. And so Kathy, who's exhausted, just looks up and says, listen, can we skip this song and skip that song? And skip? She just goes through all our best songs. She says, can we just skip them? And I just talked to them. I said, look, you don't know how far these people have traveled to be here. You don't know who's in the audience. I says, we gotta do some of our best songs for this crowd, even though we're not feeling it.
You should always do your best.
Yeah, so I'm giving them this lecture, and they said, okay. So I talked them into putting a few of our A material back on the list. So that night, Tuesday night at O'Connor's, there was someone who booked Bermuda, a club in Bermuda, and we worked that club in Bermuda for 8 months.
Yes.
So it was the best gig of our lives, and only because we stuck the A material back in the list. You know?
Yeah, and to do a segue here for a moment, and there was a lady who was a waitress in New York and fronted a band, and I was going to spring her name on you tonight, Alan. And we used to play with her at Trax, and we did a double bill with her one night, the Diane Ponzio band.
Oh, yeah.
And Bittersweet. And so Diane has, believe it or not, become a very prominent, well-known, and respected spokesperson for Martin Guitar. She's like the face of Martin Guitar. She does their videos, talks about guitars. There's a Diane Ponzio Martin model.
No.
Yes. So there she was, and it's in the middle of the night, and Trax was empty. The second show at Trax, I said to Diane one time, I said, hey, with fond memories of the 2:30 show, at Trax, and this is not meant to be a criticism of her. It's very natural to do what she did, but she, like Kathy, just mailed it in at 2:30 a.m.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
3 people sitting there.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting alone at a table. You guys were off somewhere. And she just started, talking with her back to the audience and talking to her drummer. Hey, do this, And she's like, nobody's listening. And Waddy Wachtel, Linda Ronstadt's lead guitar player, was sitting alone at the table next to mine at 2:30 a.m. And he's going, come on, do a song. You're good. You're good. I'm trying to wave her down like, guys, do a song. You got...
Well, there's nothing ruder than turning your back to the audience. I think,
Yeah. Yes, he does it. I got a question for you, Al. We're going to do some storytelling and some talking. And one of our favorite topics when we get together is show business jokes. And sometimes these jokes are things that are so esoteric that the regular world might not even get some of them. Like for example, this one. There's a actor in New York, and he sees, as he's walking down the street, his house is on fire. And the cops stop him. The firemen say, you don't want to go down this street. Is that your house? Your agent came here and killed your family and set your house on fire. You don't want to see this. And the actor's response was, my agent came to my house? This was his response. Well, very esoteric, I know. But I'm going to tell a joke in a minute. We'll do a song. But let's think of things that were, indigenous to us. You've got tons of them. Tell the one that you told me just a few minutes ago.
What was that?
That was about a legend that you were just talking to in Nashville, and you didn't know who it was.
I of all the country music recording artists in Nashville, I knew the least amount about country music, and I'm standing on a street corner one day on a break from a recording session, and I'm talking to this very nice guy and I only talking about myself rudely, and I finally said to him, people, I said, so are you in the entertainment industry? And he says, I'm Conway Twitty, the man who has more #1 songs than anyone in history. Yeah.
I love that story, and in a minute I'm going to tell what I consider to be the most worldly wise and funny story about celebrity and celebrity status. And it's Mel Brooks' story. I'm going to steal it. He's 95. He's still around. Let's do a song. Before we do the song, we have a little trio with our friend Jamie Flynn, who's in the house. And that trio is called Sons of Jersey. We have a single out, Turn You Round. Well, don't you let nobody... Alan played his you-know-what off on that song, as did Jamie. And we're going to be playing at the Stangle Factory in Flemington, the Stangle Stage. Great venue. Love it. And right now it looks like it's going to be July 21st, but I'll do plenty of posting when we nail that down. It's going to be a Friday, so Friday, July 21st, and we're going to do our typical blend of Beatles, blues, and what's another, and bittersweet. And, you know, why don't we do this? I'm just in the mood to do a nice little strummer from the Eagles here, so we'll do always a good first set song. You can turn up a little.
It's another tequila sunrise, staring slowly across the skies. I said goodbye. He was just a hired hand, working on some dreams he planned to try. The days gone by, every night when the sun goes down, just another lonely boy in town, and she's out running round. She wasn't just another woman, and I couldn't keep from coming on. It's been so long. Oh, and it's a hollow feeling when it comes down to stealing friends. It never ends. Another shot of courage, wonder why the right words never come. You just get numb. Yeah, yeah. It's another tequila sunrise, and this old world, she still looks the same. Just another frame.
You and I have often related to each other as writers, and I kind of, in my own mind, discovered you when you didn't know me very well, and I was just like a hanger-on sitting around at Tony Camillo's studio, Venture Sound. Thanks, Arlene, and hi, Raj. I assume you're there with Arlene. And so I was at Tony's studio one time. You guys were working on Mike's album, the Endless album, and I remember that during a break or something, you know, there was downtime. You were playing some songs. They might have even rolled tape to demo one of your songs, and I'm sitting there, and I was like, whatever. If you're a cover artist, you could be the best cover artist in the world, and who cares? You know what I mean? It's all about originals. And you sang a song, the first song of yours that I ever heard, and it was Maybe I Left You Too Soon, and I was just like, what? I was like, this guy can write a pop song here. That's an infectious, great little tune. Well, after that, we got together. I came over to the basement and we recorded some stuff. I was actually at Lafayette College and I was playing Maybe I Left You Too Soon on the guitar. I called you up and said, I came up with a guitar part for Maybe I Left You Too Soon, which made Mike crazy. He was like, why do you need him to play the guitar? I can play the guitar. Anyway, great song, originals, and the chemistry that you look for when you get together with someone. And here's the chemistry that Glenn Frey had with Don Henley. I saw Glenn Frey, the great guy. Everybody loved him, and he's gone too soon. And I saw him on the Tavis Smiley show near the end of his days. And he tells Tavis Smiley, he said, the first day that Don Henley and I ever got together, we wrote Tequila Sunrise and Desperado.
Wow.
And I was like,
It's a good day.
okay, there's a writing is funny, isn't it? You know what I'd like you to do? Let's do this song by the Monkees. We haven't done it. You and I love light pop music, besides the bluesy things that we do, besides the country rock things like the Eagles, besides the Beatles.
Is it what I know?
Oh, yeah. Okay. And you've done it for years, but you might have to recall it. But it's the great Monkees song that was, I think, the biggest selling Monkees record of all time. And they had so many hits, including Pleasant Valley Sunday, written by Carole King. I went to record at the House of Music, which was on Pleasant Valley Way. And I walked in the door the very first day I arrived there. Hey, yeah, hi, Raj. And I walk in, and there I was looking for Pleasant Valley Way. I found it. And right down at the end of Pleasant Valley Way is the Claremont Diner, one of the most famous diners of all time. It looks like a spaceship landed there. And I said to the receptionist, she wasn't even the receptionist. I found out later she's the owner's wife, but she was sitting at the phones. And I said, oh, Pleasant Valley Way. This is like Pleasant Valley Sunday, isn't it? And she goes, yeah, Carole King lived a block from here, and that's why she wrote the song. Oh, okay. But this song was written by Jon Stewart. It's Daydream Believer, sung by Davy Jones. Mike Nesmith said something before he died. It's hard to believe he's gone, too. And he said something I never would have suspected was true, but he said the Monkees, to us, was Davy Jones's band. Really. He said Davy was just so into the Monkees. He was a good leader. Mike Nesmith was like, I had my solo thing. I was bringing kind of solos in. By the way, Mike Nesmith wrote the Linda Ronstadt song, Different Drum, and he brought that to the Monkees, and they rejected it. The Don Kirshner and those guys got together and said, nah, that's not a Monkee song. Forget it, you know. But so he got the last laugh on that. But one of my favorite, if not, no, it's my favorite diary entry by a songwriter of all time. And this is by Jon Stewart, who was a member of the Kingston Trio for years and a great writer. And Jon Stewart said, didn't do much today, wrote Daydream Believer. You know, I mean, but that's what writing is like. Don Henley and Glenn Frey had no idea what kind of thing they had lassoed when they wrote those two songs. They probably thought, yeah, they're good, you know, but they didn't realize they were going to change, you know, a generation, Desperado. And a lot of times when you look and act the laziest, you're laying on the couch and apparently doing nothing, and this is when you do your best work as a songwriter. Huh. You know, you're sitting around just, you know, blue skying ideas. I once tried to do the old Tin Pan Alley trick of, and the hardworking songwriting technique of writing a song a day You know, and just saying, I'm going to discipline myself. I've known some writers who have done that, and the Tin Pan Alley writers always did that. Carole King always did that. The Motown writers did it. They don't wait around for inspiration. And I wrote 30 songs in 40 days. This is when Eli was a toddler. Mm-hmm. And this is what it taught me, Al. None of those songs have survived, of those 30 songs. There wasn't a single one in the bunch that I ever... But when you're laying around on the couch and you get hit by inspiration at 3 a.m., that's, I think, your best moment. And it may be a song that has such ramifications to your life. Whether or not you make money off of it or not, you may make friends, like you made me a friend when you played and wrote Maybe I Left You Too Soon. Annie heard one of my songs, Lights Across the River, and said, I want to meet this guy. So arguably maybe I got a wife out of it.
Some people give out business cards, and other people just sing songs till somebody notices.
And I'll tell my Mel Brooks story after this. Here's this song. Sing along with it, you guys, if the spirit moves you, by Jon Stewart and the Monkees. So Jon Stewart met the Monkees producer Chip Douglas, who was the bass player of the Turtles, and met him at a party. And he had aspirations to becoming, bigger than just a bass player in the Turtles. So he was starting to produce, and he said, "Yeah, we need a song for the Monkees." And I think that Jon Stewart took him aside into a bedroom or something and borrowed a guitar and sang it. And Chip Douglas said, yeah, that's it. We're going to record it, but you're going to have to change one word in your song. And Jon Stewart was like, really? What? I don't know. What's wrong with it? He goes, you can't say, now you know how funky I can be. And Jon Stewart was like, let me think about it. I think when he went home, his wife convinced him, yeah, you're going to change the word, okay, so that the Monkees record your song.
Funky's just not as timeless a word as you think it is. It's sort of like groovy, you know.
Yeah. Wow. Groovy brings so many things to mind. I wanted to tell this story, so I'll take the opportunity. This is, in my book, the greatest and most wise story about the reality of celebrity and fame and just being around the entertainment business. So Mel Brooks told this more than once, and he, of course, is always going to tell it better than me. But he said when he first got into the movie business, he's out there, he's writing, he's working on a script in this part of Hollywood, and across the street is a building with a big sign on it, Grant Arts. And he says to his writing partner, Grant Arts, what's that? He goes, that's Cary Grant's company. And he goes, Cary Grant, oh my gosh, he's like the biggest movie star. My mother loves him. I've loved everything he's ever done. And he goes, well, he eats lunch in the commissary every day, so you'll probably run into him. He's going, I'm going to run into Cary Grant? Holy. So they go to lunch one day, and sure enough, he hears from behind him. He hears, Mel Brooks, I'm a poor man because of you. I've bought every album you've ever made. Let's have lunch together. Cary Grant. Oh, my God, it's Cary Grant. He wants to have lunch with me. He sits down, and they order lunch. He says, I have a tuna fish on rye with a slice of tomato. And Cary Grant has one boiled egg. And he says he thinks that's a little strange, but it turns out he has that every day. He has a boiled egg for lunch, and he's watching his weight, etc. And they're talking, what color is your favorite color? Well, magenta is my favorite. Oh, mine's purple. How about your favorite car? I drive a Lincoln. Oh, really? I drive a Rolls, Cary Grant says.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow, great. So they're talking nice. They have a conversation. And then the second day, he calls up. It's Cary Grant. Let me talk to Mel Brooks. Oh, my gosh, Cary Grant's on the phone. So he says he always called him Cary Grant. He never called him Cary or Mr. Grant. Cary Grant. It's always, so he says, Cary Grant's on the phone. Okay, you want to have lunch together, Mel? Yeah, sure, Cary Grant. I'll be there. So they have lunch. He has a boiled egg again. Now they're talking, and they're starting to like run dry, kind of. And so now he's like, I've really talked about everything, our favorite color, our favorite car. We don't have that much in common, So the third day comes, and it's Cary Grant on the phone for Mel Brooks. He goes, tell him I'm not here. Tell him I'm not here. This is what it's like in celebrity world. You finally are like, okay, you meet somebody, and even if they're not a disappointment, finally, at the bottom line, it's going to be, how much do you have in common, And Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner were friends to the end of their lives. They used to have dinner together every night, even well into their 80s. And they had a lot in common,
Yep.
You and I have a ton in common. We both went to the same high school. A song came to mind. And you know what song I always loved that we used to do? Another kind of flighty little pop song, but just for the heck of it, let's do a little bit of this. I don't even know who wrote it. Alexa, who wrote Groovy Kind of Love?
A Groovy Kind of Love by Phil Collins was written by Tony Wine, by Carol Bayer Sager and Tony Wine.
Carol Bayer Sager and Tony Wine. Gee. Well, in a minute, we're going to do our tribute to the great Cynthia Weil, who passed away this week. She was 82 or 83. She's written more great songs than any of us can even remember or know. She wrote on Broadway, but we're going to do her biggest song. I'll save that as a surprise for a minute. But in those days, they were writing songs like this. Carole King, of course, wrote Pleasant Valley Sunday just as a day's work in the little office in the Brill building that they had. But let's do this for a minute. When I'm feeling... Is this a good key for you?
Yeah.
Go ahead, take it.
When I'm feeling blue, all I have to do is take a look at you. Then I'm not so blue. When I'm in your arms, nothing seems to matter. If the world should shatter, I don't care. Wouldn't you agree, baby? You and me got a groovy kind of love. Anytime you want to, you can turn me on to anything you want to, anything at all. When I taste your lips, oh, I start to shiver. Can't control the quivering inside. Wouldn't you agree, baby? You and me got a groovy kind of love. We got a groovy kind of love. Got a groovy kind of love. That song was called Groovy Kind of Love.
My old friend Tony Peticchio, who honored me by asking me to be best man at his wedding to his beautiful wife Susan, and high school sweethearts they were. And I flew to Lexington, Kentucky for that. And Tony's father was a judge, a great judge, Judge Michael Peticchio, great guy, and always wanted to relate to the young people, you know. And so he was always coining the latest slang, you know. Chip, what do you think of that groovy new band? You know, gee, that shirt is groovy. Good for you. And I'm like, geez.
I haven't used groovy. I'm still using swell. That's how old I am. I thought it was just swell.
Yeah, and one of his things that he picked up on was he used to tell his kids, "Tell it like it is." That was a big expression for a while. Okay, but you know, I'll spring something completely incongruous on you now, because when we get together at the Stangl stage, which looks like it's going to be July 21st, Jamie Flynn is one of the real players in the world of blues on the East Coast, and it's a competitive market, and he plays with numerous bands, and we're going to do some Jamie just said I use spiffy. And Scott said, "Hey man, let's groove to the sounds of the fam." Yeah. And yep, there's tons of those expressions. What was another one? Groovy was almost instantly out of date. Like the minute you were using it, you know, it was out of date. But so one of the things I might prevail upon you guys in our little trio, Sons of Jersey, is I want to do a couple of originals with our trio. Not a ton, but we'll do blues, we'll do Beatles, and this is a song of mine that's a blues. And Alan doesn't know I'm going to say this, but in the last couple of years, I think you've really turned into quite an adept blues bass player. Like, you were on fire when we recorded Turn You Round. Just wailing on a blues, and that's not what you're really known for, but you understand the concept behind it. And as Eric Clapton once said, the hardest kind of song to play is a slow blues. And in a way, it must be hard for a drummer. We got two drummers in the house right now. Jimmy Garabo, who's also a great drummer, one time I said, "How do you play a ballad on drums? It's just you're screaming to do more, you know, and everything about the drums makes you want to do too much." And Jimmy Garabo said, "You just have to sing the song in your head as if you're the singer," you know, which was good advice. But what do you think about playing blues bass? Is it just, you told me a couple of years ago, you said, Chip, I found out over the years it's always about playing the simplest thing.
Yes, it is. I know of no thoughts I've ever had on the subject. I just, fortunately, been playing long enough. I feel like, I'm 70 years old now. I feel like I didn't become an actual bass player until I was about 47. and this is having played bass for a living since I was 16.
Oh, yeah.
But it's because the bass is something in between a percussion instrument and a musical instrument. You have to be both. So bass is about is muting, and I do a lot of muting now with the left hand, which I never did much. Starting out, a lot of bass players are just converted guitarists at first, and so they're not into nobody mutes with the left hand on a guitar. So it took me years to figure out to go, see, that's muting with the left hand, and I used to just go dee 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 dee. That wasn't a bass. So when I finally learned to go, that was all the difference. And I started, I was about 47. I started to actually think more like a bass player, but it takes time. It really does.
Who's the greatest bass player of all time who was fretless and was in Weather Report?
Wasn't Stanley Clark?
No.
Pastorius? No.
Jaco Pastorius. Okay. So you say you spent till... I'm just reading Scott's thing. You say it took you till you were 47. Jaco Pastorius said something way, way back when in Rolling Stone magazine, and it just imprinted on me, and I never forgot it. And it was... And by the way, you can add some more bass content to your bass, I think, if you want. Because this microphone doesn't pick up bass that well. But Jaco Pastorius, when he was 18, was playing with Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders, which is a really tight R&B band. And he went out for a summer with them and getting paid good money, getting girls, and wearing costumes and just top of the world. And then, most people would think, boy, am I making it, And Jaco Pastorius said in Rolling Stone magazine, he said, I came back from this tour with Wayne Cochran, and I sat down in my living room. I had some downtime between gigs, and he said, now I'm going to learn how to play bass. This is a guy who's already playing tight, hard charts and great tight R&B things. But he said, now I'm going to learn how to play bass. And I've thought the same thing about myself, as you just said. And I started playing lead guitar when I was 16, and I already thought I had aged out. I was already like, Steve Phillips been playing lead since he was 13, and I'm 16. And it wasn't until really 10 years ago that I really started to study and concentrate and immerse myself in blues lead for the last 10 years. And I took lessons with David Spinoza online. He told me stuff. And this little song I wrote that's called My Way of Crying is really my emblematic credo. And if I do a blues album, this will be the title track, My Way of Crying. And it goes like this. Just a 12 bars straight. My heart is breaking, but I got no tears left to lose. My heart is breaking, yeah. I got no tears left to lose. My way of crying is to sing and play the blues, yes. Even when I break down, My tears still refuse to fall. Even when I break down, my tears still refuse to fall. My way of crying is to sing and play the blues for you all. Eyes are dry and weary, and heaven only knows who understands. Yeah. My eyes are dry and weary, heaven only knows who understands. My way of crying, yeah, is right here in my hands. Yeah. I'm gonna cry one more time. A pleasure to play the blues with you. And we shall be doing some blues. We'll be doing our single. That's something I didn't think I'd hear myself say anytime soon. But we'll be doing our single that night at Stangle Factory, July 21st. That's about 90% locked in, I think. And so we'll be sending emails out, et cetera. We want you to join us. And I know it's hard to pry yourself off the couch these days. It is for me. Arlene, thank you. Appreciate that. And we do have the virtual tip jar if you scroll up. And we'd appreciate whatever support you could give. And Alan drives out from Central Jersey, which must be, with all the traveling you do, that must be a breeze. But and usually he has a bag of the finest coffee with him that he lays on me, and then we talk a mile a minute for an hour or so, and we cover everything and get deep into philosophy. Years ago, we were talking about Zeno's paradox. Remember that? That was a topic. Zeno's paradox, the great philosophical paradox, no other word to describe it. The paradox being that man's philosophy cannot explain how we get from point A to point B. It's a theoretical impossibility to walk from here to the door.
Yeah.
And people have told me, no, they figured that out years ago. They figured it because why? Oh, let me backtrack for a minute, friends.
Is that the
You
one?
can divide every distance in half infinitely. So when you get down to a molecule, why can't you divide that in half? Why can't you divide an atom in half? Well, I know you'll split the atom and blow up the world, but I mean, you could blow up an atom and to the size of a foot, and then you could divide it in half theoretically, but you can't. It doesn't work that way. So people were scoffing at me, saying this is not a question anymore. They figured this out. So I called. I was a philosophy major at Lafayette College. I majored. I studied with the head of the department, Professor Clark. We used to have breakfast together. And I called. He was long gone. And I said, could I talk to any philosophy professor? Did I ever tell you this? No. And so they get a random philosophy professor, pull him out of his office and say, this guy wants to talk to you. He's an alumnus. So loosely speaking, I am. And the guy goes, yes, can I help you? I said, well, I studied with the philosophy department under Dr. Clark. And I said, I have a question. Have you guys ever figured out Zeno's paradox yet? And he goes, no, we never have. He says, why do you ask? I said, because I'm thinking of going to the fridge for a snack, and I just want to know if I can get there theoretically or not. And he's like, and then he said a funny little thing. He says, no, that's what they pay us for. That's what they pay us for, to consider these great ideas. We talk politics. We talk a lot of BS. Is there anything tonight that comes to mind with, O'Connor's had so many colorful characters and so many strange things happen. I mean, a lot of the things can't be repeated in polite company, but anything jump out at you? One of the guys, of course, was Jerry Blumetti, one of the most colorful characters of all time, and there were things that happened with him along the way.
I'm not sure how deeply we should get into this.
Yeah. Right, with him especially. He came over to me one time when I was there in the afternoon, maybe for a rehearsal with Bittersweet, and he says, look, I want to show you something. Come here. And he shows me his pant leg of his suit, and there's a hole in both sides of his pant leg. Zelmore, are you still listening to this? Carol Zelmore she knows exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about Jerry Blumetti. There's a hole. I say, well, how did you do that? He said a girl was over last night and took my Walther out of the holster on my bedpost, pointed at my closet, and pulled the trigger, and it was live. The safety was off, and she shot a hole through all my clothes in the closet. I'm like, Jerry, leave the safety on, when you have guests over. I guess it's better if we don't have too many stories, because a lot of times you get stories from things going awry on gigs. That's what makes the most memorable. And you and I have a thing that if we ever write our book, Gig, which is my idea for a book, we'll have a whole chapter that's called, Are You Really Gonna Make Me Say It?
Yeah.
Because that's a thing that happens to every musician at every gig. You walk in and, okay, where do I plug in? And they show you here's where you're going to set up. And there's no outlet there. So you're like, are you really going to make me say it? Do you have an extension cord? I can't plug in there. Jamie, remember the guy sliding across the dance floor on his chest one night? You mean at O'Connor's or someplace else? Yeah, there's so many things. I saw, like, the mother of the bride fall down on her rear end on the dance floor like a skater. She was in her stockings, and she fell kind of with a thud, and everybody kind of laughed. And rather than play it funny, she acted mad, which made it funnier. It got to be like a Three Stooges. She's like, hey, stop that. You know, she's like, don't laugh. You know.
That's funny.
Well, we've had an enjoyable time as always. I'll be back next Friday, Lord willing. Yeah, O'Connor's, that happened. One thing I learned at O'Connor's, just as a little bit of craft trivia about things you learn, is I played there with my band, the Stingers, and I wrote a song that was in what I call a Bo Diddley feel. Yeah. And that song was called She's So Modern. Mm-hmm. And so a Bo Diddley feel, as Scotzo and Jamie both know, and as you know, a Bo Diddley feel is just about the most infectious feel of all time. And so I had this song, and we had a dance floor, and they were hot to trot, hot to dance. And so I said, let's do She's So Modern. You know, whoa. And they literally screamed, Alan. People were, wow! You know, and they jump up, and can you see what's coming here?
No.
They emptied the dance floor within 30 seconds. And that was when I found out nobody can dance to a Bo Diddley beat.
Oh, yeah.
You all look like Elaine on Seinfeld.
Yeah.
You know, it's all herky-jerky. And then we had a song called Room Full of Noise, which was just a straight, like Chuck Berry said, when I get waylaid, will you still let me in? When I've been losing. And everybody danced to that. And they danced for 4 minutes to that song. We could jam all night on it. And they were, woo, it just is a perfect beat, a Chuck Berry song.
Yeah.
But the most infectious beat, another really infectious Bo Diddley beat, is Two Trains, which is... Yeah. And nobody can dance to that. I mean, they try to that song. But, well...
This is an actual story. It is bizarre. It was like the Twilight Zone. I traveled to Las Vegas to film a promotional video for a Beatle band. And I was the McCartney in this Beatle band. So, and in this, we got some dancers, and we're doing Twist and Shout. This famous song, you know, the Beatles, a big hit of it. And we're singing the song, and in the middle of the thing, the dancers just stop and go over to the producer and say, you know, could you speed this song up? We're having a lot of trouble dancing to it. And I'm thinking, these are professional dancers who can't dance to one of the most danced to songs of all time. So this was, you know, so we had to play the song so fast it sounded ridiculous, and I should have just killed the dancers where they.
No. But I, you know, we see that happen all the time. Joy, thank you for your comment. Appreciate it. Say hi to Devin for us. We spoke about the great Cynthia Weil, and she wrote on Broadway, and she wrote Kicks for Paul Revere and the Raiders. We're not going to have time to do that tonight. We'll do it when we get together again, and. But we are going to do what is arguably her greatest song, and it's been tracked down by the royalty people as being the song that has the most radio airplay of any song.
And it's not Blame It on the Bossa Nova.
No, she wrote that too. She wrote that too.
It's not
but
that
this is, and it's over 4 minutes long, and the famous Phil Spector story is that he actually lied about the time of it, and he wrote 3:50 on the label or something, 3:49, and they said, well, the record's like 4:15. What are you doing? He said they won't play it if it's over 4. And he says by the time they figure out that I lied about the time, they'll already be playing it, you know. So let's do it, and we'll say goodnight with this one. God bless you all. Hi, Nancy. Great to see you. Is that a good tempo? Never close your eyes anymore when I kiss your lips. There's no tenderness like before in your fingertips. You're trying hard not to show it, but baby, baby, I know it. You've lost that love and feeling. Oh, that love and feeling. You've lost that love and feeling. Now it's gone, gone, gone. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Want to sing it?
There's no welcome in your eyes when I kiss your lips.
As I reach for you, girl, you're starting
to
right.
criticize every little things I do.
It makes me just feel like crying.
It makes me just feel like crying,
Baby,
'cause baby, something beautiful's dying.
you've lost that love and feeling. Oh, that love and feeling. You've lost that love and feeling. Now it's gone, gone, gone. Whoa, whoa. Baby, baby, I get down on my knees for you.
If you would only love me like you used to do, yeah.
We had a love, a love, a love you don't find every day. Don't let it slip away. Baby, I'm begging you please, I'm begging you please. I need your love, I need your love. Well, bring it on back, bring it on back, bring back that love and feeling. Oh, that love and feeling. Bring back that love and feeling, 'cause it's gone, gone, gone. And I can't go on. Thank you. Good night. God bless. Have a great weekend.